Welcome to the deep dive.
Sure.
Our mission today is a really deep exploration into what you could call the literary battleground of the new wave.
Right.
We are plunging headfirst into a collection of source materials that were built around a very deliberate idea, the idea of transgressive fiction. Works that were, explicitly intended to challenge pretty much every social norm, shatter comfort zones, and fundamentally redefine the political and psychological potential of speculative writing.
It's such an essential moment in literary history that's captured here. I mean, these sources, they give us a snapshot of a genre in an active state of insurgency, really.
Insurgency, that's a great word for it.
Yeah. They all stem from this one anthology that was dedicated to collecting what was called far-reaching innovative fiction. It was a book designed specifically to capture established writers right when they were actively trying something new.
And showcasing new voices, too.
And showcasing new voices, flexing their maximum literary muscle. The themes are they're unflinching. They span everything from the psychological ethics of warfare to the literal, industrialized commodification of the human body.
So our goal here is to extract those surprising, sometimes, deeply uncomfortable nuggets of insight about these challenging works.
Yeah.
And about the writers who really risked their reputations to write them.
Right.
We're focused on seeing how a literary editor actively battled what he calls self-censorship and the just entrenched expectations of the genre, all to give you, the listener, a shortcut to understanding the intellectual frontiers of that era.
And that battle, that fight against censorship and gatekeeping, it started immediately, right at the publishing gate, before the manuscript was even fully put together.
Ah, yes.
The most immediate piece of intrigue defining the mission is what's known as the Ballard incident.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the outcome of this specific story, it just illustrates the exact problem the anthology was designed to solve.
Yeah.
We're talking about the writer
J. Ballard, yeah.
He was already known for pushing limits in both form and content. So he wrote a story specifically for this collection, making sure it was innovative, boundary-breaking.
That's right. But the crucial detail, the part that makes this so telling, is this. The editor in Los Angeles never actually saw the finished manuscript.
You never saw it.
Never. The story was submitted, but it never made it across the country. According to a magazine interview Ballard gave later, he was under the impression that the editor had rejected the story.
Why?
Because it would, quote, offend too many American readers.
So that sounds like, a pretty standard editorial call.
Exactly.
Nervousness about commercial viability or, audience backlash, that kind of thing.
But that's not what happened at all. The real story is so much more revealing.
It is, isn't it?
It is, and it's profoundly cynical. The truth is, it was Ballard's own agent in New York, Richard Curtis Associates, Inc. They made a complete prejudgment about the story's contents.
The agent, wow.
Yep. Without even waiting for the editor's opinion, they just decided the content was too offensive, too far outside the lines for American audiences, and they shelved it themselves.
So they preemptively censored their own client's work.
That's it.
That's just astounding. A third party decided, on behalf of the entire American readership, that a piece of challenging fiction was too dangerous to even be considered by the editor who commissioned it.
It perfectly illustrates the exact kind of internal gatekeeping and self-policing the whole book was designed to fight against.
So what happened to this story?
Well, it wasn't suppressed for long. Michael Moorcock, over in England, he published the piece in his magazine, New Worlds.
And how was it received there?
It instantly drew the praise it deserved, specifically for its transgressive nature. I mean, it's the perfect opening anecdote because it shows you, the listener, how often the boundaries aren't held by the reader's actual moral outrage,
Right.
but by the intermediary's assumption of that outrage.
That example really does set a fiercely uncompromising tone. So let's talk about the explicit intent of this editorial project. Challenging the gatekeepers, challenging the entrenched expectations of the genre. The editor was intentionally seeking out innovative fiction that went beyond the genre's, typical limitations. And this applied across the board, even to the veterans.
It was a very clear declaration. He said asking for innovative fiction was not mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to save a dying genre. It was demanding evolution from a thriving one.
I like that.
Yeah. The challenge was even extended to the older, recognized writers, the ones who had established reputations for doing one certain kind of story. He was explicitly pushing them to evolve or, face stagnation.
So it wasn't just about finding new talent.
Not at all.
Right.
The editor noted that while it was a joy to see the new writers flex their literary muscles, it was an only slightly less joyful joy to see the older, recognized names try something new and actually succeed. It was about forcing literary movement at every level.
And of course, when you publish a book that challenges literary conventions and you include extensive, very opinionated analysis of the works and the authors and the culture around it,
You're going to get some controversy.
you are guaranteed a controversy around the supplemental material itself.
As the legendary introductions and afterwards, yes, opinion was fiercely split almost immediately. It's fascinating how much attention the packaging got compared to the contents.
So some people liked it.
Some readers absolutely loved it. We have the example of a reader, Sherry Colston from Hannibal, Ohio, who said she relished the candid verbosity. She felt the added material offered amusing and insightful asides on the writers and their methods.
So she saw it as added value, context.
Exactly. They appreciated the sheer level of communication and context. They saw it as insight.
But others saw it as unnecessary editorial ego.
Precisely. On the opposition side, you have a prominent critic, Edmund Cooper. He was reviewing the English edition in the London Sunday Times in May of '71.
And he wasn't a fan.
He seemed flat out enraged by it. His core complaint was that the book does not seem to contain any dangerous visions. Instead, he just complained about the overwhelming structure.
The structure itself was the problem for him.
It was. He listed out 1 foreword, 2 introductions, and 16 stories, each with an introduction and afterword. He saw all that commentary as just overwhelming the actual fiction.
It sounds like the sheer volume of the analysis offended him more than any of the content might have.
I think that's a perfect way to put it. But what was the editor's ultimate motivation for writing all that? Was it just scholarly intent, or was there something else going on?
That's the question.
The editor was pretty candid about it.
Yeah.
He explains that he enjoys writing about his friends, about the real and very fallible human beings behind what can sometimes seem like flawless fictions.
That's interesting.
And he justifies it by saying he believes there's a lot to be said for making oneself as happy as possible. And then he adds the zinger.
Which is?
Even if it means making Edmund Cooper miserable.
That's such an arrogant but incredibly effective statement of purpose, isn't it?
It really is.
It shows the editor was willing to commit to the vision, even if it meant intentionally generating controversy or criticism from the establishment. He wasn't just publishing challenging fiction. He was publishing challenging editorial work, too.
And this editorial confidence, it reflected a much larger shift that was happening in the field at the time. It was an era when the literary world was realizing that, pure name recognition wasn't the sole important commodity anymore.
Right. Historically, anthologies almost exclusively featured the work of recognized names. If you had a big name on the cover, the book sold. Simple as that.
But the emergence of new series like Damon Knight's Orbit and Chip Delaney's Quark alongside this one made it obvious that names are no longer the important commodity we have to sell.
So this wasn't about disrespecting the veterans.
Not at all. It was about acknowledging that raw talent and innovation were flooding the market from new places, from new voices.
It signaled a seismic shift in how value was perceived then.
Absolutely. The sources note that the newer writers, the ones who had grown up absorbing science fiction since the 1940s, were now taking our carefully nurtured ideas and turning them inside out to show us visions of tomorrows we never dreamed ourselves.
They were fearless about deconstructing the foundations laid by their predecessors.
But here's where we hit that enduring paradox, this creative shift.
Yeah.
It comes with a significant cost, and that cost is resistance from the audience itself.
The fan problem.
This is what the source material calls the fan problem. When writers try to evolve, when they try to challenge expectations, fans often resist the change with this fierce, almost proprietary devotion.
It creates a strange dynamic.
Yeah.
Fans seem loath to raise newcomers up quickly, maybe seeing them as a threat to their established favorites.
Right, and at the same time, they can stunt the established writers by holding them rigidly to their old standards. They demand new books, but they want the same book.
Is there a specific example of that?
The classic example cited, which really drives this point home, is Isaac Asimov, a true giant. Here's a guy who published well over 100 books, defined multiple generations of the genre, yet he still gets asked constantly if his best work is Nightfall.
A story from 1941.
1941. That story, though brilliant, was written decades before the bulk of his major output. It speaks to a fan base that sometimes struggles to accept growth beyond the moment they first connected with the writer.
And that inability for the audience to let go of the past, forces writers into some really uncomfortable literary and commercial decisions.
It does. We see this with Kurt Vonnegut, for instance.
How so?
He fought incredibly hard to have the word science fiction disassociated entirely from his work, presumably to escape the genre ghetto, but also to escape the genre expectations that came with that label,
They wanted the freedom to be judged purely on literary merit.
without the baggage of needing to satisfy a specific fan expectation.
Exactly.
So when that pressure to innovate, to perform, and to satisfy an often conflicted audience gets too intense, the internal psychological toll must be immense. It is, and the sources include this description of writer's block that reveals the profound torment underlying the creative process for these pioneers.
It's not just a minor inconvenience then. It sounds like genuine torture.
It's described as terrifying. One contributor calls it a frightening, mouth-drying day when nothing comes. They quantify it as torments of a hell you can't even name. Because the failure is internal, it's existential.
Wow.
The most memorable analogy provided is that of being nibbled to death by mice in Philadelphia.
That image alone captures it. The frustrating, slow, debilitating nature of staring at a blank page when you know you're supposed to be producing groundbreaking work. It's the constant, irritating attrition of the soul.
And this wasn't a rare thing confined to one or two less established writers. We have specific examples of this psychological hell afflicting major talents. Theodore Sturgeon.
One of the giants of the new wave.
He went through blocks that lasted around 3 years at a time.
3 years.
3 years of that internal nibbling, the pressure must have been just unbearable.
I can't imagine.
And Robert Sheckley, another master of dark satire, he experienced blocks that drove him far afield, kept him off the typewriter for a year at a time. It's specifically noted as driving him all the way to the Costa Brava in Spain.
It's a powerful reminder that even for these great innovators, the process of extracting that dangerous vision is far from flawless or easy. It's often born from intense struggle and self-doubt.
The act of writing itself is a constant battle against the internal gatekeepers, even before you face the external ones.
That contrast between the inner psychological torment of the writer and the externalized institutional cruelty projected onto the future, it provides a necessary bridge to our next deep dive. We're now turning to a profound and challenging excerpt from Ursula K. Le Guin's work. It explores ecological destruction and cultural genocide 27 light-years from Earth on World 41, the New Tahiti colony.
This text, The Word for World is Forest, is one of the most critical pieces in the whole collection. It functions as this uncompromising mirror, reflecting Earth's history of colonialism onto an alien landscape.
A masterclass.
It's a masterclass in how institutionalized cruelty is rationalized and how violence becomes a transferable disease. We are immediately introduced to Captain Davidson.
Davidson is the embodiment of the colonial mindset, a big, hard-muscled man whose singular, unwavering goal is to tame the planet. He treats it as an untamed wilderness that needs to be, brutalized into submission.
And Le Guin gives us access to his mind right away. We get details of his waking thoughts as he mentally takes stock of the situation, ticking off 2 pieces of yesterday.
Okay.
And this dual focus is key to understanding his priorities.
So what's the first thought?
The first thought is one up. It's the arrival of a new shipload of 212 breeding females for the New Tahiti colony.
Breeding females.
That's the term used. They're described merely as prime human stock. It immediately reveals the depth of his objectification and his focus on procreation for the sole purpose of colonization.
And the second thought? The one down.
The one down is the disastrous report from Dump Island. It details crop failures and massive erosion because the Terrans cut down too many trees.
So reality is intruding.
It is. Davidson acknowledges that the expert, a man named Keyes, was right about needing to leave trees standing, but he instantly dismisses the scientific and ecological evidence.
Why the immediate dismissal? I mean, he's facing undeniable proof of ecological ruin.
Because Davidson operates entirely on this principle of manifest destiny married to biological superiority. He argues that Earth is a tamed planet, and New Tahiti isn't. The failure, in his mind, is not his methodology, but the world's resistance to it.
So he doubles down.
He justifies the destructive path because, as he says, we're men. It confirms that he views himself not just as a colonist, but as a kind of divine or superior agent meant to force this world into submission, regardless of the cost.
In this mentality, it extends immediately to the indigenous population, the Atsheans.
Who the Terrans derisively call Creechies.
Right. And his justification for their enslavement and abuse is one of the most chilling aspects of the text.
It's the ultimate rationalization for atrocity. He explicitly states that this treatment isn't slavery because, in his rigid worldview, slaves are human.
So if they aren't human, what are they?
He compares them systematically to livestock. He says, when you raise cows, you call that slavery. No. He just strips them entirely of their capacity for feeling.
He argues that they don't feel pain like humans,
Mm.
more like eating a robot or like fish.
The physical and psychological degradation is justified because they are not, in his mind, sentient beings capable of suffering. It's a complete dehumanization.
And he tries to prove this to himself, doesn't he?
He does. To solidify this incredibly dangerous worldview, he provides this personal, horrifying anecdote about fighting a tame male in Centralville. The Athshean jumped him, and Davidson recounts having to damn near kill him before he'd even let go.
What does he do?
He breaks the Athshean's arm, gives him a near concussion, yet the native kept coming back.
And how does Davidson interpret that?
He interprets this incredible endurance, this spirit of resistance, as simple, brute lack of sensation.
He sees not courage or desperation, but sheer mechanical persistence.
Exactly. He compares the Athshean to a beetle you have to keep stepping on because it doesn't know it's been squashed already. This profound dehumanization provides the moral license for him and his men to commit every subsequent atrocity. They're not being cruel, they're just maintaining a superior biological order.
And in stark contrast to Davidson's brutality, the sources meticulously detail the sophisticated culture of the Athsheans, revealed through their unique physiology and the trauma they endure.
This is where Le Guin's genius really, really shines. We learn that many Athsheans, particularly the dreamers from the lodges, they operate on a polycyclic sleep pattern.
What does that mean exactly?
It means they cycle through shorter periods of sleep and wakefulness throughout the day. They simply cannot adapt their lives to the Terran 9-to-5 workday without fundamentally disrupting their psychological processes.
And the disruption isn't just, being groggy. It targets the very core of their sanity.
It does. It disrupts their REM or paradoxical sleep cycle. And for the Athsheans, this cycle is absolutely crucial because it governs their ability to do their dreaming wide awake.
Dreaming wide awakes.
Yes. It means the balance of their sanity relies on this double support, the fine balance of reason and dream. Their dreaming state is not just a release, it's an active waking mode of psychological organization for them.
So when that cycle is disrupted by forced labor, the results are catastrophic.
Precisely. Many of the men become groggy, confused, withdrawn, or even catatonic. They are psychologically breaking because the equilibrium between their rational and dream selves is destroyed.
And the women.
The women, while physically adapting by exhibiting the sullen listlessness of the newly enslaved, also suffer immense degradation and psychological shutting down.
We also see the cultural gulf in their traditional methods of conflict resolution.
Right. Their tradition is the complete opposite of Terran kinetic violence. They traditionally use ritualized singing, a contest exclusively between males, which replaces physical combat entirely.
Though the better artist wins.
The better artist, the more compelling singer, wins the conflict. This shows that for the Athsheans, aggression release is intrinsically tied to art, aesthetics, and psychological control, not physical force.
So the inevitable narrative tension builds around Selver, an adept dreamer whose equilibrium is destroyed.
And Lyubov, a Terran expert who genuinely tries to understand the Athsheans and considers Selver his friend. And Lyubov had theorized, fatally, that the Athsheans were naturally incapable of killing.
That assumption is proven tragically and devastatingly wrong.
It is. Lyubov learns that Selver harbors a profound and personal grievance against Davidson. Selver's wife died in Davidson's quarters immediately subsequent to sexual intercourse with him.
And this violation, coupled with the systemic grief and violence, leads to Selver's transformation.
He suffers exile, shame, unimaginable pain. An old man describes Selver as the harvester of the fruit of fear, and he does a new, unimaginable deed. He introduces a new, terrible, and destructive word into his people's language: murder.
This is the central, agonizing philosophical question Le Guin poses, isn't it? A question we should pause on.
It really is. Did Selver learn to kill his fellow men from his own dreams of outrage and bereavement? Was it born internally from his cultural trauma? Or did he learn it from the undreamed-of actions of the strangers?
Was he speaking his own language? Or was he forced to adopt Captain Davidson's language of violence?
That's the question. This act of killing, this new foreign plague, it threatens to destroy the very nature of the Athshean people by giving them a weapon they didn't know they could wield.
And the crisis escalates rapidly. Following the Smith Camp massacre, Davidson's reaction reveals the absolute depths of his extremism.
He views Colonel Dong as splah, or stupid, for releasing the native workforce. He sees that decision as letting loose traitors who knew the Centralville layout.
So Davidson's response is not containment.
No, it's immediate escalation toward genocide. He sees the massacre as a perfect excuse for systematic aggression against the natives. He explicitly suggests bacteriological extermination, most likely. He calls it the best final solution to the Creechy problem.
It shows how quickly his desire to tame the planet morphs into a desire to erase it entirely.
He personally commits unspeakable acts. He guides a raiding party that burns up a native warren by hand and drops a firebomb on another, stating he did it to write his signature real clear and plain for everybody to read.
He describes this bombing run as something that made the green fur fly.
Yeah.
Tell me.
But the tide ultimately turns against the Terrans.
Right.
Selver dictates terms to the remaining Terrans. There are fewer than 2,000 left. All their women are dead. He notes that they are very ill from defeat and imprisonment.
And what are the terms?
He instructs them to destroy their large weapons and make a promise now enforced by their newly learned capacity for violence, to wait for the ship, the Shackleton, which is still 3 years away. They must leave.
And what of Captain Davidson, the progenitor of the violence? What is his fate?
Selver spares his life, which is itself an act of incredible cultural complexity. His own people would kill Davidson per their law.
But Selver chooses a different path.
He leaves Davidson at a place called Renblep, a place traditionally meant for the mad. He tells Davidson they are both gods now, but Davidson is an insane one who brought the gift of killing.
And he offers a gift in return.
Selver concludes the exchange by offering Davidson his people's gift, which is not killing. It's an exchange of pathological ideas, a moral exchange that defines the entire story.
The Le Guin story serves as a foundation, showing how violence and psychological destruction become these transferable diseases. Now we turn to other equally far-reaching, though perhaps more surreal, visions of the future. Starting with a truly shocking alternate world imagined by Piers Anthony in his story, In the Barn. This is alternate world number 702, where the commodification of humanity reaches a horrifying and industrialized extreme.
This piece is just. It's raw social commentary dressed as horrific fantasy. It forces the reader to confront the limits of empathy and the consequences of total objectification.
So what's the setup?
The investigator, a man named Hitch, enters a barn and discovers Caucasian women being literally treated as dare animals.
Referred to as cows.
And the extensive detailed instructions manual implies this isn't some rare aberration. This is a normalized, industrialized process across this entire world.
And the text forces the reader to sit with the disturbing specifics of this degradation, which is essential to its purpose, right?
Absolutely. We get horrifying details. The description of fitting the milking harness, which chafed against memories that hung against each other like full wineskins.
It establishes that collapse of dignity.
It does. Then there is the mandatory rectal probing described in the detailed manual, which Hitch must perform. And the sources emphasize the investigator's internal reaction, noting that during this process, his member was so stiff it was painful.
That detail is crucial, isn't it? It forces the reader to acknowledge the complex, twisted relationship between this institutionalized sexual violence and the investigators, who are clearly products of this horrific society.
Exactly.
It's shocking that Hitch is shocked by the commodification itself, not the gendered violence.
Exactly. Hitch is shocked that this abuse is not even in the name of war or racial hatred, but pure, cold, biological, and commercial maximization. The total collapse of human rights is engineered entirely for industrial output.
And the purpose behind the physical mutilation of the young is truly insidious. It targets the very essence of human evolution.
It does. Hitch witnesses a female cow delivering a calf. The female attendant immediately binds the baby's thumb and fingers together with tape to form a stiff mitten, to deliberately cause the muscles to atrophy. This mutilation is based on a perverse biological theory, the idea that man owes his intelligence to the opposable thumb. By purposefully destroying the thumb, they ensure the animal remains non-sentient, non-sapient, and fundamentally subhuman.
Justifying their use as livestock. And the mother, witnessing this mutilation, gives the pragmatic reason for gender preference in this world.
Yeah. She notes that males are considered a waste because you can't get milk from a bull. The entire system is built to maximize the female body's output and minimize human intellectual potential. It's one of the most brutal reflections on gendered violence and capitalist horror in the entire anthology.
The anthology takes us from biological horror to geopolitical trauma in the next jump, exploring how even interstellar space travel can't erase ancient Earth conflicts.
Right.
We explore the political extremism persisting in the Alabama versus Haiti conflict, where colonial loyalties and racial hatreds just persist across star systems.
This future posits a horrifying perpetuation of extreme ideologies. The Alabama faction clings rigidly to this politically charged, toxic language. They maintain the rhetoric that the purebred white man was the highest form of humanity,
Expressing visceral hatred of Negra and Jurobs.
and believing that, Alabama was formerly an independent Damo Earth nation. The level of detail suggests these cultural conflicts are preserved and amplified, achieving interstellar reach.
And in this context, the Haiti government, fighting for its survival against this extremism, has adopted some desperate, culture-specific measures to gain a military edge.
Yes, a resuscitation program.
Tell us more about this unique form of psychological warfare.
Well, this program uses the deep cultural and nationalistic aspects of voodoo to man spaceships with resuscity crews. The idea isn't necessarily just to get warm bodies into cockpit seats.
It's for the psychological impact.
It's entirely for the psychological impact. These ships carry special markings designed specifically to terrify the enemy, projecting the chilling message that the dead themselves have been compelled to fight the war.
The resurrection of the dead as soldiers becomes a horrifying tool of fear.
Weaponizing ancient spiritual beliefs for advanced warfare.
And we see the tragic, visceral reality of this war through the eyes of Christophe Bellador, an Haitian Marine who is tasked with collecting the bodies after a particularly gruesome battle.
The description of the aftermath is grim and uncompromising. Bellador collects the shattered and frozen cadavers of 2 Space Marine detachments, white and black. The bodies are mixed together, burned and axed with torn away limbs and organs.
In death, the racial distinctions the Alabama faction cherished are utterly meaningless.
Utterly. It's a graphic illustration of the total randomized destruction that results when ancient ideological hatreds persist into an advanced technological age. The bodies are just shattered meat, regardless of color or creed.
Finally, we turn to a form of warfare and control that takes place entirely within the mind. We shift from physical violence to intellectual violation, the legal battles described in Stoned Counsel, where lawyers literally fight in a shared dream space.
This story posits a bizarre future where the courtroom is obsolete, replaced by a neural battleground. Trial lawyers use complex psychoactive drugs and a headpiece to project their arguments and evidence in a shared dream space, where the jury perceives the projected reality of the case.
And the preparation sounds intense.
It is. The lawyer must ingest the client's cortical cells.
Right.
Direct ingestion of the facts is what they call it. It's to achieve a perfect, empathetic understanding of the case and the client's truth.
So the fight isn't about rhetorical flair. It involves aggressive, often brutal, psychological and intellectual techniques. We've seen lawyers play dirty in courtrooms, but this takes it to a whole new level.
Absolutely. The stakes are sanity and legal victory. One technique detailed is the cortical squeeze.
The cortical squeeze.
It's used to suck new information, often stipulated facts or deeply hidden truths, directly from an opponent's brain. It's a mental violation, a data siphon conducted within the mind.
If the goal of justice is the fair presentation of facts, what does the use of such aggressive tactics do to the notion of legal ethics?
It suggests that the pursuit of factual truth in this future justifies intellectual and mental trespass. The concept of justice is warped into a test of mental fortitude and strategic psychological projection.
And we see an example of this.
We do. In one key case described, the lawyer Craven uses a purely sexual projection, flinging himself on a woman in the dream to distract his opponent, Palevsky.
A cognitive disruption.
A massive cognitive disruption. It leads to Palevsky screaming in agony, and Craven wins the ruling. The defendant must install filters.
It's a truly terrifying system where emotional manipulation and direct cognitive attack are key legal strategies, entirely justifying mental violation if it leads to the desired ruling.
And the source notes a critical element of this system. The 2 lawyers communicate immediately after the dream battle, and they reveal their ability to read factual truth from verbal smokescreens.
So the dream state bypasses our normal inhibitions.
The idea is that it does. It reveals deeper truths about the case than any conventional cross-examination could. But the cost. The cost is the complete elimination of personal boundaries.
Having explored these extreme scenarios of future pathology and control, let's pivot back to the voices who created them and the cultural environment they were operating in.
Right.
The editorial commentary in the sources repeatedly addresses the ingrained male chauvinism that was prevalent in science fiction writing, even among acclaimed writers who were otherwise pushing boundaries.
This internal critique from the editor is fascinating because it tackles unconscious bias head-on. He analyzes a novel where the female agent, who is supposedly, quote, specially trained, ultra-efficient, tougher than hell,
Though she's not portrayed that way.
she's constantly portrayed as weak, sniveling, semi-hysterical, puritanical, illogical, inefficient, and silly. Meanwhile, the male character is consistently positioned as the rational hero who has to step in and show her the way.
The critique highlights a linguistic disparity that reflects this bias perfectly, too.
It does. The narrator refers to himself and other males constantly as men, but perpetually refers to the woman as a girl.
And the editor points out the absurdity of this.
He does. He states that for consistency, if the female character is a girl, the author should refer to himself and the other males as boys. It just highlights the infantilization inherent in the language used to discuss competent women in the genre.
But the most glaring cellular evidence of this unconscious bias is a single line. A line directed at the female character when she acts sappy and illogical.
Don't go female on me.
Don't go female on me.
That single phrase, it just encapsulates the embedded prejudice, the idea that irrationality is intrinsically linked to femininity. The editor suggests that this prejudice is so cellularly ingrained that the male authors are entirely unaware of it.
Yet it undermines the very progress they claim to be making in their stories.
It shows that even in a movement dedicated to challenging norms, internal norms of sexism remain fiercely protected.
This context highlights the critical importance of the female voices featured in the anthology, who were actively pushing against these invisible boundaries.
Absolutely. For example, Joanna Russ's Picnic on Paradise was a Nebula nominee in 1969, a clear indicator of its literary eminence and recognition.
Despite the fact that the editor notes some established genre editors had previously passed it up.
Right. And then there's Evelyn Leaf, whose biographical snapshot connects her revolutionary writing directly to her revolutionary life. She was part of the growing women's liberation movement, living in a commune,
Which is described as a white ghetto of 2 houses inside the black ghetto.
while she was juggling work as a typist and writing her innovative stories. This intersection between radical living, social activism, and the crafting of experimental fiction is crucial to understanding the New Wave movement.
The writers were not just thinking about revolution.
They were living it.
Now, let's pivot to some colorful and highly specific biographical anecdotes that bring the eccentric personalities behind the fiction to life. We start with Andrew Offutt, known for his colorful life in Kentucky.
Offutt, who was clearly a man of immense personal drama, famously wrote 3 novels while still in college. But his most famous story, it centers on a monumental act of financial brinksmanship at a hospital.
Okay.
After his wife delivered their daughter, Mary Ann, the hospital business manager refused to dismiss the patient until the substantial bill was settled.
So Offutt found himself in that psychological hell we talked about earlier, the torment of the moment.
He did. So instead of writing a check, he decided to perform a magnificent piece of personal theater.
What did he do?
He told the business manager that he and his wife were leaving immediately, but they would leave the baby, Marianne, as a hostage until he was financially able to pay the bill.
He left his baby as a hostage.
Stated explicitly that he would not pay the bill until Marianne was old enough for college tuition. He signed the papers and walked out with his wife, leaving a baby hostage.
That is incredible bravado. And that debt was allowed to stand for years, wasn't it?
It grew. 21 years later, the outstanding hospital bill, with accruing interest, had grown to over $364,000. It had become a financial legend.
But the story has a deeply satisfying literary twist, bringing us back to the idea of art and life reflecting one another.
Indeed. His daughter, Marianne Barber, had grown up and become a doctor. She was working 10 days at the very hospital where she was left as an infant hostage.
No way.
And she settled the entire outstanding bill herself for $80, which represented her wages for those 10 days at $4 a day.
A perfect, humorous, and deeply theatrical resolution to a 21-year bluff.
It's incredible.
Moving from financial brinksmanship to sheer public humiliation, let's look at the strange market value of David Gerrold.
Right. The writer who achieved wide fame after selling his iconic Star Trek script, The Trouble with Tribbles.
which got a Hugo nomination for Best Dramatic Presentation in 1968.
And this anecdote perfectly captures the ephemeral nature of fame versus the iconography of a popular show. At the 1968 World Science Fiction Convention, a fundraising auction was held.
And they auctioned off items and people.
Right. To raise money for the convention fund. Gerald himself was auctioned to a fan for $22.
A respectable price for a Hugo-nominated satirist, you might think.
You would be wrong. Because here is the crucial, surprising fact that defined his value in that moment. One of his furry little tribbles, the prop used in the show, was auctioned off for $22.50.
50 cents more than the creator himself.
50 cents more.
That slight difference, $22 versus $22.50, is a profound piece of commentary on commercial success, isn't it? What does that half-dollar difference truly tell us?
The editor notes that it suggests something profound about the market value of a 6-foot-tall, 150-pound, brown-haired, hazel-eyed Star Trek centerist as compared to useless balls of fluff.
It highlights how quickly, in the popular imagination, the iconography, the tangible furry symbol of the show, can eclipse the actual human genius and effort that created it.
Fame is fleeting. A fun, furry gadget, however useless, can become an immortal commodity.
Finally, we touch on Terry Carr, an editor and writer whose journey highlights the precarious, volatile nature of the professional writing life in that period.
Carr, who was a forceps baby noted to have slight indentations behind his ears, moved to New York determined to write, and he succeeded wildly, at least initially.
He sold everything he wrote.
He astounded himself by selling everything I wrote. But, much like the torment of writer's block, he was still starving because he wrote too slowly to keep up with the commercial demands of the field.
He lacked the commercial speed necessary for survival.
Exactly. He worked briefly as an agent before taking a 7-year editorial job at Ace Books, achieving some semblance of stability in a highly unstable field.
But even that security was temporary.
It was. The end of that stability came dramatically in 1971 when his job vanished during what the source caustically refers to as the Great Recession that seems to have been a reality for everyone except Mr. Nixon.
His career trajectory perfectly encapsulates the volatility of the industry at the time, particularly for those who prioritize craftsmanship over speed.
Completely.
We've covered a breathtaking range of material today, from philosophical discussions on the delicate balance of sanity in an indigenous culture to the raw shock of industrialized human commodification. This collection of sources is proof that the label Dangerous Visions wasn't just marketing hype. It was a promise kept through unflinching commitment to exploring the dark limits of human thought.
The sources reveal that the true danger in these visions, it lies not just in extrapolated technology, but in the depths of human nature, our capacity for creating and institutionalizing cruelty.
Whether that cruelty is expressed through Captain Davidson's genocidal hubris,
Or in Alabama's enduring racial hatred perpetuated across star systems, or the sheer biological objectification we saw in Piers Anthony's alternate world. The danger is us.
and by immersing ourselves in these deep-seated societal fears reflected in the author's most challenging and experimental work, you, the listener, gain a broader and more nuanced perspective on the current world.
Right.
This fulfills the goal of being quickly but thoroughly informed about the frontiers of human thought and why these historical acts of literary transgression still resonate so much today.
And we end where Le Guin leaves us, with a profound and terrifying exchange of destructive and constructive gifts between two vastly different cultures.
Selver, the Athshean dreamer, refers to Davison as an insane god who brought the Athsheans the new, terrible gift of murder.
And that violence is now part of their cultural vocabulary. It's something they can't unlearn.
Selver, in turn, attempts to give Davidson his people's gift in return, a gift of mercy and sanity, though Davison is too mad to accept it.
And this raises an essential and provocative question for all of us to consider. When seeking to tame or civilize a culture or an idea different from our own, be it literary, social, or global, how do we as individuals and societies distinguish between offering genuine enlightenment and merely transmitting our own deepest, most destructive pathologies?
The line between giving a gift and spreading a plague.
As these authors showed us, it's terrifyingly thin and always worth examining.